Okay, let's dive into one of modern medicine's most complicated tools. We're talking about glucocorticoids, but you probably just know them as steroids. Now, these drugs can stop crippling inflammation dead in its tracks. They're amazing, but they come with a really serious dilemma, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack here.
And this quote right here, it absolutely nails the problem. We have this incredible, life-changing medication that, at the same time, carries this heavy burden of potential side effects. So the real question becomes, how do you balance the miracle with the menace?
To really get a handle on this dilemma, you first have to appreciate just how revolutionary these drugs are. Their story kicks off in the middle of the 20th century, and believe me, it was an absolute game-changer for medicine.
I mean, just try to imagine it. You're suffering from debilitating rheumatoid arthritis, your joints are in agony, and then this new treatment comes along that feels like it just magically erases your symptoms. That was the reality in the 1950s, and that one successful treatment, it started a revolution. Steroids were suddenly being used in dozens of different medical fields.
And it's not like their use has slowed down. Not at all. Today, the global market for these drugs is a staggering $5 billion, and it's still climbing. That alone tells you just how essential steroids have become in hospitals and clinics all over the world.
So who's actually taking them? Well, a whole lot of us. I mean, look at this list. They're a frontline treatment for super common stuff like respiratory infections and allergies, all the way to really serious chronic conditions like asthma, inflammatory bowel disease, and lupus. Their sheer versatility is a huge piece of their miracle status.
Okay, so how in the world do they do it? How can one single type of drug treat so many different problems? The secret is in how they attack one of the body's most basic processes, inflammation.
So at their core, glucocorticoids are basically synthetic versions of cortisol. That's a natural hormone our own bodies produce to manage things like stress and, you guessed it, inflammation. They're designed to be incredibly powerful, to just turn down the volume knob on both our inflammatory response and our entire immune system.
Here is the perfect way to think about it. Imagine inflammation is your body's fire alarm. It's loud, it's urgent, and it's screaming that there's a problem. A steroid doesn't just go over and hit the silence button. Nope. It goes down to the fuse box and cuts the power to the entire building. It's unbelievably effective at stopping the noise, right? But as you can probably guess, shutting everything down has some pretty big consequences. So, what does that power cut actually look like on a biochemical level? Well, it's like a chain reaction. The steroid gets into a cell and flips a switch. That switch tells the cell to start making these proteins called lipocortins. These proteins then go and block a critical enzyme which stops the production of all the chemical messengers that create inflammation in the first place. The end result? The whole process, what scientists call the inflammatory cascade, it just grinds to a complete halt.
But, cutting power to the whole building, that has consequences. And this is where we get to the other side of the story, the price you pay. We're talking about the significant, body-wide side effects that come with suppressing such a vital function. Right, this is the big question. We've seen the miracle part of the story, so now let's dig into the menace. What actually happens to the rest of the body when we turn down inflammation in our immune system so dramatically?
First off, it's super important to realize that not all steroids are the same. This table here shows you the relative strength of just a few different types. And you can see right away, beta-methasone is a whopping 25 times more potent than what our body naturally makes. That massive difference in strength plays a huge role in the potential for side effects.
And those effects, wow, they can reach into every corner of your body. Because these drugs are copying a fundamental hormone, they can mess with almost every system we have. We'll start with one of the biggest and most common targets, your metabolism, and specifically how your body deals with sugar.
This is a massive risk. Steroids basically fight against your insulin. They tell your liver to pump out more glucose, while at the same time, they make your body's tissues resistant to insulin. What happens? Your blood sugar goes way up. In fact, about a third of all patients on steroid therapy get high blood sugar, and these drugs are the single biggest cause of drug-induced diabetes, period.
Okay, next up, let's talk about your bones. This is another major system that takes a hit. Steroids create what is basically a perfect storm for bone loss. They speed up the cells that break down old bone, the osteoclasts, and at the same time, they slow down the cells that build new bone, the osteoblasts. The result is it's terrifyingly common. Up to half of all patients on long-term therapy will suffer a bone fracture. Half. And these changes aren't just happening on the inside. Long-term steroid use can dramatically change how a person looks. There's a whole collection of symptoms called Cushingoid features, and they include things like a really round face, sometimes called a moon face, fat moving to the upper back, and major changes to the skin, making it super thin, fragile, and very slow to heal.
And it's truly a domino effect. It's not just one or two problems. We're talking increased cardiovascular risks, muscle wasting, a much higher risk of infection because your immune system is turned down, and even serious mental health effects like depression, anxiety, and in some cases, psychosis.
And please, let's be crystal clear about this. These are not rare complications that only affect a few people. Research shows that a staggering 90% of patients on these drugs for more than 2 months will experience side effects. And this is true even for people on what doctors would consider low doses.
So with all these profound risks, the entire conversation has to shift to management. How can doctors and patients possibly work together to get all those amazing anti-inflammatory benefits while trying to keep these hidden costs as low as possible?
And you know what? The single most critical part of managing steroids isn't how you start them. It's how you stop them. Just stopping a course of steroids cold turkey can be incredibly dangerous.
See, when you take external steroids, your body's own cortisol factory basically shuts down. It says, hey, we're getting plenty, I'll take a break. If you suddenly stop taking the pills, your body is left with no cortisol at all, and that can cause a life-threatening adrenal crisis. That's why tapering, slowly, carefully reducing the dose over time, is absolutely essential for anyone who's been on them for more than a few weeks. It gives your adrenal glands the time they need to wake back up and start working again.
So, if you or someone you care about is taking steroids, these are the absolute must-knows. You have to talk with your doctor about the dose and for how long. You've got to proactively check things like your blood sugar and blood pressure. And let me just say it one more time for emphasis. Never, ever, ever stop taking them suddenly without a doctor telling you how. It's just not safe.
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to where we started. Glucocorticoids are an indispensable tool. They're a true medical miracle that has saved and improved millions of lives. But they come with a heavy price. The challenge for medicine now and in the future is to find new ways to keep all that amazing power while protecting patients from the hidden costs. How can we get better at balancing that miracle with the menace? Well, that is still the central question, and it's one that doctors and scientists will be working on for a long, long time.